Oscar Piastri unstoppable as the championship leader claims pole position for the Spanish Grand Prix as Red Bull suffer a disaster with Yuki Tsunoda, who qualified in last. From Racing News 365, my name is Nick Golding, and I'm delighted to be joined, as always, by lead editor Ian Parks. And Ian, going into qualifying, McLaren had topped all three practice sessions. FP3 in particular, Oscar tops by almost 0.6 of a second. He looked the business in Barcelona, and well, he did the business in Q3. Pole for the championship leader.
Cheeky was Oscar's comment at one point with regard to his teammate Lando Norris, because at the end of the opening run in Q3, Lando was ahead by 0.017 seconds. That was a little bit to do with a small toe he managed to get from Oscar along the back straight. Oscar, of course, hitting the brakes rather hard at that point, and that's when he said over the radio, cheeky. Well, payback for Oscar, of course, was that, as you say, he managed to get pole position by quite a comfortable margin in the end. It is an all McLaren front row lockout for the first time here at the Circuit de Catalunya in Barcelona, for the first time since 1998. So it's going to be a incredible run down to the first corner, because we've got Max Verstappen in third, George Russell in fourth. And if anybody remembers last year's Spanish Grand Prix, George Russell started in fourth and came out of that first corner leading it. So it's fair game for that first corner. We know it's a good rundown. We just got to hope it's going to be a really good race that follows. Now, the one bonus that we might get out of this Grand Prix, Nick, is that ordinarily the Spanish Grand Prix is a one-stopper, can lead to a bit of tedium, as we know. One of those circuits where it's a little bit tricky to overtake. However, Mario Isla has indicated, the Pirelli Motorsport director just had, Mario Isla has indicated that it's going to be really difficult to do a one-stopper tomorrow. That's simply because of the time taken in the pit lane here and the wear on the tyres. So we might just get a two-stop strategy here at the Circuit de Catalunya that's not mandated, unlike in Monaco a week ago, of course, where it was mandated, bearing in mind what a one-stopper can do for that race. So we might just get a little bit of drama, fingers crossed.
Nicely put, but it is staggering, isn't it, that, we came into Barcelona, particularly at the end of Friday, had a feeling that actually maybe the field had closed up as a result of this new front wing regulations, the new technical directive, but actually this has arguably been McLaren's most dominant qualifying performance of the season by some mile.
I'll quote Lewis Hamilton on this technical regulation that's been introduced for this weekend regarding the front wings. We know there's been this change to the front wings to focus on flexing, complaints made by some teams last season against certain other teams. So the FIA decided to introduce new flexi wing tests, new load tests on the front and rear wings. Rear wings was cleared early this year. Front wings, we've waited until the Spanish Grand Prix just to give the teams more time to ensure that they weren't wasting money on building a new front wing from the get-go at the start of this season. However, as I say, to quote Lewis Hamilton, what a waste of money. That was Lewis's direct quote when I asked him in the pen afterwards whether he'd felt there'd been any effect from the front wing on his Ferrari across the course of the weekend so far. Lewis made it clear that no, that was not the case. It maybe affected balance a little bit, but overall, the teams have wasted their money. They'd have been better off giving their money to charity than what they've had to invest in these front wings for this weekend. Andrea Stella as well, the McLaren team principal, indicated that pretty much they always knew from the get-go that any advantage that might be gained would be almost infinitesimal. Decimals was the word that Andrea Stella used to describe the minor changes that were going to be taking place. At the moment, we've not really seen any change whatsoever. None of the drivers have really felt too much benefit, apart from those that maybe added a little bit of aerodynamic performance to that front wing, aligned with the associated regulation change. Racing Bulls being one of those. Alan Permain, the sporting director on that team, said in a debrief on Friday morning that 80% of their new front wing on that car was focused on the regulation change, 20% towards an aerodynamic update. And as we've seen, Isaac Hadjar once again doing great things in qualifying to land another healthy grid position. So yes, for those that went down the slightly aerodynamic route, there's been a bit of a difference. But overall, in terms of adaptation for this new technical regulation, not a game changer in any way, shape, or form.
Just to quickly whiz through the top 10 from qualifying. Oscar Piastri claimed pole position, Norris in second, Verstappen in third, Russell fourth, Lewis Hamilton in fifth, Kimi Antonelli in P6, Charles Leclerc seventh, Pierre Gasly eighth, Isaac Hadjar again getting to Q3, he starts ninth, and Fernando Alonso in P10. Ian, as I mentioned in my intro, a disastrous day for Red Bull on Yuki Tsunoda's side of the garage. He qualified in plumb last compared to Max in third, and of course Isaac Hadjar as well in ninth. It's bad to worse for Yuki. I mean, where does he go now?
Well, just to give you some idea, though, on this, Nick, yeah, as you say, Yuki was 20th on Norris, which is horrific for Red Bull, quite obviously. Max, I do believe, was the third quickest in Q1. Only 6/10 of a second separated those two guys. We're talking 18 positions that are difference, and there was 6/10 gap. It's not a lot. In relative terms, yes, of course, it is in qualifying, but overall, when you know the bigger picture, as you say, there was 6/10 gap between Oscar and Lando at the end of P3, for argument's sake. There was a quarter of a second gap between Lando and Oscar at the end of Q3. So, just gives you some ideas to the fine margins that we have these days, and just what a difference it can be made if you just manage to get the car in the right spot. Now, speaking to Yuki in the pen, naturally, you can fully appreciate it was pretty downbeat, but his comments were nothing new, I'm going to say. So, what we heard from Sergio Perez during his declining season last year, nothing new from what we heard from Liam Lawson during his two race cameo with Red Bull at the start of the season. The difficulties in trying to get this car in the right window. It's always been thus with that second car compared to what Max Verstappen can do with it. So for Yuki, he knows there's an awful lot to do to such an extent that there might be changes overnight. They will break apart for May, and he's indicated that there might be a pit lane start for him on Sunday because the bottom line is he's got nothing left to lose.
Well, you're absolutely right, but at least Red Bull does have Max in P3, and as we saw last season, as you mentioned, from the second row, George Russell in fourth last year, anything can happen into that first corner. We saw George go from fourth to first into the first corner last year. I mean, Max's best chance, surely, given McLaren's race pace, has got to be get ahead into turn one.
Absolutely, definitely. Now, it's going to be a clear opportunity for him, but I'm still not going to rule Max out over the course of this Grand Prix, particularly, as I say, if there are going to be two stops. Yes, it would be ideal for him, quite obviously, to get into that first corner, or at least to thrust himself between Lando and Oscar, who, whatever the situation might be, whatever the order might be, coming out of that first corner. But as I say, I still think he's got a reasonable chance. Red Bull were looking, as I say, relatively strong over their long run pace. I do think Max has got a very good car beneath him, even though he might not have been able to extract enough on this occasion to have challenged the two McLaren guys in qualifying.
And actually, on terms, obviously, alongside Max on the second row is George in fourth again on the grid. And obviously, it's been a couple of difficult races for Mercedes, going back to obviously the struggles in Imola, a difficult Monaco. Despite the hot temperatures in Barcelona, looking pretty good. George starting fourth, Kimi in sixth. You've got to think they're maybe hoping for a podium.
Maybe, but then maybe not, because George has already indicated that in terms of the race pace, the temperatures that we're going to see again on Sunday, where we're talking about high 20s. It was 29 today, 45 track temperature. That's really not going to play into Mercedes' hands, George Russell thinks. So it might be a little bit of a tricky one for both he and Kimi on Sunday. And instead, it could be that the Ferraris, in particular Lewis Hamilton, might be a bit of a threat towards that front three. Lewis most definitely targeting a podium for only the second time this season, and the first time since the Chinese Grand Prix, the second race of the year. He managed to qualify ahead of his teammate Charles Leclerc. So that was a little bit of a bonus for Lewis, bearing in mind when you consider that in FP2, it said the car was not drivable. That was because Lewis explained he'd felt something with the car on Friday. He was expecting the team to address it. They hadn't done. So he was kind of wondering what's going on. As he put it, he was a bit confused by that. Nevertheless, they discovered what the issue was post FP2, managed to get on top of it. And for once, Lewis has got a reasonable car going into the race on Sunday from a relatively decent grid position for him this season.
That wraps up F1 talk. We've got to mention something from Formula 2 because a remarkable sprint race took place ahead of qualifying. And you obviously got a chance to speak afterwards with Alex Dunn, McLaren's junior driver, who has gone through a difficult week, is fair to say, given, of course, what happened at the first corner of Monaco in particular. What was he had to say? Because it sounded like it was some pretty remarkable stuff.
Yeah, I really wanted to touch on this, and I'm hoping people are going to stay with us with this video as I explain the nature of what happened and the reason why I wanted to introduce this into the video, just to give people the background. Alex Dunn, championship leader going into the F2 feature race last Sunday, was on pole position, and he was too aggressive into the first corner. Uh, should have backed off, really. He hadn't got the first corner Sandoval with Victor Martins alongside him and just ploughed into Victor Martins. It caused an almighty kerfuffle behind, numerous cars involved in the incident. And the outcome was a 10-place grid penalty for Alex going into the sprint race here at the Spanish Grand Prix. And then practice session on Friday, Alex makes another mistake, goes into the back of, would you believe, Victor Martins at the end of the pit lane entry. 6-place grid penalty on this occasion, 3 applied to the sprint, 3 applied to the feature race. So Alex overall was given a 13-place grid penalty for the sprint race. Started 19th on the grid today, delivered a magnificent performance, managed to rise to second on the grid. So naturally, I thought I'd go to the F2 press conference post-sprint and speak to Alex. And I asked him the question, Alex, just give us your thoughts on, first of all, what happened give in the practice, going into the back of Victor Martins. Did you feel the penalty was fair? As I say, 3 and 3 from the FIA to add to the 10th place last week. But also, you faced a lot of criticism post that Monaco incident. Do you feel that with your drive today going from 19th to second, you've answered the critics? Alex, in his response, turned around and said, I'll answer the last question first. And he then proceeded to turn around and explain what he'd gone through post Monaco. Basically, he'd been subjected to vicious hate online. He'd said he'd never experienced anything like it previously, to such an extent that he decided to delete all his social media accounts. As he was answering this, you could tell he was starting to get a little bit upset. And as he then tried to continue, it was quite clear that what he had experienced this past week was just too much. And he allowed his emotions to get the better of him. And he did start to cry, unfortunately. The questioner overseeing, the FIA questioner overseeing the press conference, then decided to allow Alex to take a break. And she said, we will come back to that question later. We never did. We moved on to other topics. But nevertheless, the point I'm trying to raise with this, Nick, is that this young driver, who's a McLaren junior, no less, he's been taken on the books by McLaren. He's seen as a bright young talent. It just goes to show what online hate can do to people, to such an extent that Alex not only had to delete all his social media accounts, but in trying to talk about it, it broke him down into these emotions and these tears. I actually went up to Alex post the press conference And he doesn't know me. He's never met me. I'm a new face to him because I've never really covered F2 in the past. And actually, of course, yes, I watched the races that unfold over a weekend. But of course, I just felt for the first time that given what had happened to Alex and his great performance today, let's not move on from that. It was a great, great drive. I just felt it incumbent upon myself to go and speak to him afterwards. And I said, look, you don't know me, probably don't know the name, but I've been a Formula One journalist for over 20 years now. And I just wanted to let you know you're a great talent. It's pretty obvious you are talented. You wouldn't be where you are now. You wouldn't be backed by McLaren right now if you weren't a talented driver. Stay strong. Don't let the haters beat you. And I also spoke with Andrea Stella after Andrea Stella's media debrief after qualifying. And Andrea mentioned as well during the questioning during that media debrief that they were fully supportive of Alex. They were very proud of him, actually, for displaying that side to him, but recognizing as well that this is what the world we live in is now like. And it's very unfortunate that Alex has had to be subjected to this. And as I say, at least he knows he has great support behind him. McLaren is fully behind him. So hopefully, as I say, be careful out there, folks, with some of the things you type. It's the main point I'm making. Just realize before you pen a message, what kind of effect that might have on the person that you are writing about. We've seen it this past week. We know it's occurred across in the past as well. Yuki Tsunoda's been subjected to it from Franco Colapinto's followers. We've talked about that in previous updates. So that's the full reason why I just wanted to lay this on the line.
And there's two simple messages that come out of that. Be nice, everyone. And ultimately, if you have nothing nice to say nothing at all. And hopefully we get to a point soon where all this social media hate towards no matter what driver, what category does come to an end, because nobody wants to see it. Ian, amazing stuff as always. Please do, for those watching, be sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel, especially if you want to be in with a chance of winning a scale model F1 helmet of your favourite driver. Sunday is the final day to be subscribed to the channel to be entered into that draw. If you're already subscribed, don't worry, you're in the draw, so best of luck. Ian and I will be back after what will hopefully be a very exciting race on Sunday. See you later.
Fingers crossed, Nick. It is Spain, but take care, folks.